what you see, and this kind of brings me to why I wanted to have this conversation, just an important note for you, because one of the things as just like younger people in like the online Christian space and like seeing a lot of the things that are going on in popular culture, and something that's really prominent outside of the charismatic movement altogether, I guess it would be inside, but like outside of the formal one, all of the mainstream non-denominational churches, all these mega churches, all of those kind of churches and the people who come from them and teach from them teach these gifts. They speak in tongues, they worship in tongues, they teach the gift of prophecy, they have all of these rules and all of these tenets and all of these things, and we see it on social media a lot. It's part of why I have this question, because I'm like, where are they getting this from? They're using a lot of stuff that's not in the Bible, and so I want to know where it comes from. The structure is so formal and they all teach it universally, and so there's some really big podcasts out there with people who are like in the Christian space and share this kind of stuff, but they have like this idea of like, it's a word of encouragement that you give to someone, and it's a prophetic word. And then when you give it to someone, you say, if this is not from God, then let it fall. But in my mind, like you said, if a prophecy is not from God, then that man should keep his trap shut. So I'm curious what you think about all of that. Do you think all of that is a corruption, or does it weigh from more what I'm saying, that maybe there is the opportunity for a gift of prophecy out there? And something that I've always had in my head was just maybe these spiritual gifts are a little bit more rare than we think of them as. Maybe this is not like 100 prophets walking around in a church, but like maybe each church has a couple of prophets or something like that. Although it seems to be obviously a big enough issue for Paul to write about it in something like 2 or 3 different letters. So I'm interested in what you think about that.
I agree. I think the online space is incredibly dangerous today, especially for young Christians who are new or are kind of getting their feet wet with Christianity and kind of curious about it. If they go to online space, because the biggest, like you said, I keep up with all this because I've been at home for a little bit now. And so I've been, delving into, and I do things very non-traditionally to keep up with the culture. Like I'll watch horror movies. I'll look at online homosexual pastors. I'll look at the TikToks from blatant heretics. I'll look at it all. And what I see is just massive confusion. I mean, I would hate to be a day old Christian trying to get some information online, because what the algorithms do is they push you not toward an orthodox channel like yours, like actual teaching biblical truth. They'll push you towards the heretical ones, and those are the biggest ones. Amen. And even some of the biggest names that are kind of, I would say, people would say are kind of solid. It's just, if you have a whole gallon of pure water and you put a drop of arsenic in there, the whole water gets poisoned. And that's, these people, 80% of what they say is good. And then you listen to one thing and you're like, whoa, that is not Jesus. What you just said there is off big time. And it's just, that's what their understanding will be. So I think it's incredibly dangerous. And with the prophecy, I guess the question I have real quick before I continue is, what do you do in your understanding? And I appreciate everything you're saying. In your understanding of prophecy, then, what do you do with somebody who gets one prophecy blatantly wrong? Does that person sit down now and lose his title of prophet, or is he allowed to just keep going? And see, that's the biggest problem in the charismatic church, because Chris Vallotton and some of these people have taught. I heard Chris Vallotton say, you can look it up, and I'm not sure what percentage he said. I think it was 20, that a prophet can get 20% of his prophecies wrong, or the prophet today is not expected to be inerrant like it was in the Bible. And once again, like I asked the question like you did, where do they get that? Where does it say that in the Bible? So what do you do with the prophet that doesn't get 100% of his prophecies correct? And that question has to be dealt with in contemporary society, because look at the Donald Trump thing in 2020. Everybody was prophesying, oh, Donald Trump's going to be in office, don't worry about it. And then Biden comes in, then they switched up. Oh, I meant he's eventually going to be in. Biden isn't going to finish his thing. That didn't happen. They just kept correcting till they found out that they couldn't correct anymore because nothing they said was true. But the same people that did these false Trump prophets are still making prophecies online, and they still have millions of followers. It's like, 100%. Where do we hold these people accountable? Like, what's the biblical boundary here for prophets today? I would say that to you, since you kind of are on the side of prophecy being around today. What do you do with the one false prophecy? Do you kick that person to the curb, or is it acceptable?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, what I would call, I guess, good charismatic theologians, which I think there is a group of. I think there is areas of people who are trying to legitimately do it correctly and are trying to do it biblically and are not basing it off of these kind of sound teachings, kind of followers of like Sam Storms, Dr. Sam Storms. He's a modern guy who's kind of big on the gifts. And then he has some churches that are like under him. And there's a podcast called Remnant Radio. Those guys are, they're the most theologically sound, charismatic people that I've stumbled upon. And so they, I believe, say that they would throw anybody out for one bad prophecy. They would say that you are not a prophet. Like they would say that if you gave an incorrect prophecy that you shouldn't be in there. But it also seems like the prophecies that we talk about being given in the modern day are very minor, sort of kind of like we mentioned, like it's just the idea of like, I foresee something good's going to happen to you. Like God has a plan for you in the next few days, or, he's going to use you in a way that you're not expecting or something. And it seems to me like they're just ubiquitous enough to like apply to someone's life. And that's the reason why I'm so honestly cautious of it. Like, I feel like this is the big thing that I'm trying to rectify, because I think the Bible does not teach the absence of gifts, but it seems more theologically sound to say that there is an absence of gifts, because every example I've seen of it seems overdone and seems farcical and seems kind of problematic. And I've just not been convinced of it. So that's exactly where I am on the line. Like, I'm not convinced that there's prophecy today. I think the Bible suggests to me more that there would be prophecy today, that Christians should anticipate to have some sort of spiritual gift, but I don't know what it looks like. I think it's very mysterious to me exactly what it would look like, because I've seen the examples of this stuff. I've been, usually not on purpose, but I've been to some of these charismatic events and things like that, whether accidental or just fellowshipping with people, because I still think that's okay. And like you said, I think they're still brothers and sisters in Christ, even if things might go astray. But I've been to some of them, and then I get sort of that bad feeling about it. I don't like, they'll go up, the way they do it is they'll go up on stage and they'll say, God's telling me that someone in here is dealing with back problems. And if that's you, then put your hand up. And it's like, there's a high percentage chance that somebody in the room's dealing with like a back problem. And if you wait long enough, somebody's going to say, yeah, my back hurt for 5 minutes last week. And so I have a little bit of a problem with that, because I'm thinking, if this is a gift from God, I think God would be clear. I don't think he would play games with it. And it's true that he speaks in riddles, and the prophecies are often kind of parabolistic and somewhat riddled. But just for this practicality of it, if we're doing this every Sunday, which a lot of these charismatic churches are, and every Sunday God's like, I see the numbers 7 and 1, and the person who needs healed, those numbers are significant to them. I'm like, that seems like a weird way to approach it. And so I feel like I mostly agree with you, but I have just not yet been able to shut down the possibility of the spiritual gifts, which is sort of why I want to hear from people who've encountered the spiritual world, because I've talked with other missionaries and people like you who've really been on the ground with spiritual warfare, which I think is the more important side of it than the gifts even. And they have varying perspectives because they've seen the Spirit work. And so they know that supernatural things are possible. And so they're not denying the existence of gifts for that reason. They're denying the existence of gifts because they're being misused and because they're being mistaught and because there seems to be something wrong at the base of it.
I agree. I think as a missionary, being in Haiti, which, arguably is the biggest witchcraft country from a person-to-person basis in the world. I mean, it's like, I don't know too many countries that have a national religion that's Satanism or voodoo. This permeates the entire country, and that everybody practices it. And so taking it head on and witnessing the spiritual gifts of Satan, for lack of a better term, it's impressive. I'll say it outright. It's impressive. It caters to the flesh, and it excites us. And that's what scares me about the Christian side of it, because whenever you see supernatural, you start getting excited. It kind of perks your flesh up in a way like, oh man, did you just see that? That's amazing. Mm-hmm. And you start, if we're just going to be honest about it, you start being more impressed with the gift than the gift giver. And that's a very dangerous place to be. And that's exactly in 2025 when the supernatural has a stigmata about it that it does. Like, I just don't think in the first century people were overly impressed with seeing supernatural things. It just doesn't appear that way, right? It just seems like this is going on all the time, and no one's like oohing and on about it. It's kind of like just like to the fact that they see it and they don't even convert when the supernatural gift is right in their face. They don't care that much. I mean, they see the Red Sea part in the Old Testament and they're cursing God 2 days later. So it's like they're just not that impressive to people. So I think we're impressed. Sure. And I think that is one reason that I stand as a cessationist, is because God knows us. And I think today, if say you severed your spinal cord in a car accident tomorrow, and I flew to your house and I laid hands on you and you could get up and walk. Now, do you think people are going to be massively drawn to Christianity or massively drawn to me? And let's just tell the truth. People will be massively drawn to me. I'll get rich. I'll get famous. I'll be able to fill arenas and charge people to come heal people. And that's the world we're living in today, where the person will become famous. And we have proof of that with these Benny Hinn's and Kenneth Copeland types that fill arenas and are practical billionaires today because of these gifts they have. And where's Christ? Where's Christ? Did Paul ever fill an arena and charge admission to heal people? I mean, this is the messed up world we live in. And so I go back to Haiti of seeing the supernatural and the demonic realm. And every time I consider defeating it, we got to also look at what is defeating it. And I think we think of the horror movie where we just wave our hands and say some words, and all of a sudden the demon comes out screaming and yelling, and we see this thing bolt away, and we're like, yes, we beat the demon. That is not at all the New Testament understanding of this. And when I defeat the demonic, it's sitting with a voodoo priest who has been in allegiance with these demons for decades and has been actively possessed on an ongoing, if not daily basis, has done sorcery, supernatural signs and wonders his whole life. And I shared a gospel with him and he believes it and he's saved. What more supernatural thing do we want as true followers of Christ than that? Forget curing the blindness, the spinal cord, forget healing, forget the prophecy, forget the tongues. If that is what the result of my interaction is with someone, I would take that 100 times over any of that other stuff we're talking about. And I think we got to get back to basics of what is truly supernatural in the Christian world. It's not healing and blind healing and all stuff. It's salvation. And that wasn't able to be offered in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, you saw signs and wonders because no one had ever heard of this before. And people needed evidence of these people were actually carriers of what they said they were carriers of. So God allowed them to do things that were supernatural. But you see, if you study, all you got to do is read Eusebius's church history. When you look at that, it seems like right after John dies, there's this precipitous drop in just signs and wonders being on the earth. I mean, you just don't see it like you did in like from 30 to 100 AD. So I think when I got to Haiti and started dealing with this, I was just like we're talking about. I wanted to see the supernatural. I wanted to do the healing. I wanted to do all this stuff because I'm figuring if the devil's working this way, I can counter him with my own miracles through God in me. But God quickly sat me on the bench and was like, Malcolm, you got to get this right. This is not a magic show, a magic competition where you do one thing and the occultist does another, and it's like an Elijah standoff on the mountain with the Baal prophets. This is like, I've given you the Holy Spirit now, and now this is the dispensation of salvation. Now you can actually, through sharing the gospel, someone can be saved and eternally secure. That's the true miracle, and I think that's where the charismatic movement gets off. Because to that movement, salvation isn't the miracle. The miracle is the gold dust coming out during the thing, or the healing, or the raising the dead, or whatever it is. But those were all types of salvation that were supposed to point us to salvation in the Old Testament. Those were all types of things. Raising Lazarus from the dead was a type of salvation. We're dead. We get raised from the death by Christ calling us out of our tombs. If you look at all that stuff, the signs and wonders were never meant to. They're not in the New Testament to be mimicked. They're in the New Testament to stand as a symbol of salvation. It's so much better.